When I was a kid, I loved the horror section at the video store. I never actually rented any of the movies. I don't think I even thought of it as an option or even asked my mom if I could. Honestly, I don't think I even wanted to rent them, but just looking at the VHS covers was enough for me. It scared me just to look at them. I'd build up my courage and then I'd go in for a quick look. And I could usually handle it for a few seconds before feeling overwhelmed and having to look away. But every visit to the video store, I feel compelled to look again. One particular series I remember being drawn to was Friday the 13th. I was aware of Jason because he had such a presence in pop culture at the time, but the only thing I really knew about him was that he was a killer who wore a hockey mask. And so any of the covers featuring a hockey mask intrigued me, especially the covers for Part 5, A New Beginning, and Part 6, Jason Lives. The seemingly floating masks with mysterious beams of light shining through them made them seem otherworldly. They were mesmerizing and they captured my imagination. So even though I was aware of Jason and his VHS tapes routinely beckoned me, I don't think I saw any of the Friday the 13th movies until I was an adult. I don't know if it's my cognitive impairment, but I don't even remember how old I was when I finally saw one of these movies. I'm gonna give my brain a call, see if maybe he remembers how old we were.
Thank you for calling your brain. How can I assist you tonight?
Hey, I was wondering if you remembered how old we were when we first saw...
I'm sorry. We're experiencing a higher than normal call volume. Please stay on the line.
Okay. I'll check back in a bit. A few years ago, I got this Friday the 13th box set with the first 8 films in the series. It was missing Jason Goes to Hell and Jason X, but I found this double feature set to round out the collection. It was also missing Freddy vs. Jason, but that's on this Nightmare on Elm Street box set. I still hadn't seen every movie in the series, and the ones I had seen it had been many years, so it's been fun slowly making my way through the series. To make it more special, I've been watching one every Friday the 13th. Most holidays only occur once a year and are always the same time of year, but when you think of Friday the 13th as a holiday, it's like this nebulous mini Halloween sprinkled throughout the year to make life more interesting and spooky. So on September 13th, 2019, I watched Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. It's the third movie in what fans call the Tommy Jarvis trilogy, which started with the 4th film, the final chapter. It was originally supposed to be the final film in the series, hence the subtitle. Still on hold. I do kind of like the song now. Anyway, the first 2 films in the Tommy Jarvis trilogy are mostly notable for their bizarre dance scenes.
How come you turn that off?
But one of the best things about the final chapter is the introduction of the Jarvis family, including the Tommy Jarvis character played by Corey Feldman.
Get a haircut,
Oh, Ma.
It's a nice mask.
Do I have to get a haircut?
You're getting pretty terrific at making those things.
Thanks. I just customized it.
The presence of the family, including a single mother and a young child, gives the movie a little bit of an interesting new perspective, as well as thematic parallels to Jason's backstory. But it still focuses too much on the typical teenage characters, so it's still kind of just a run-of-the-mill Friday the 13th movie. Now, I'm not gonna fault a Friday the 13th movie for being a Friday the 13th movie, but the first 5 films in the series just feel like a different version of the same movie, over and over again. However, the 6th movie, Jason Lives, is the first movie that really feels like it transcends that formula and becomes its own thing, and that's largely because of the characters.
No.
Tommy Jarvis is a psychopathic killer. He wants you to believe that
It was Jason.
For example, this older version of Tommy Jarvis, played by Return of the Living Dead's Tom Matthews, is such a good continuation of the character. The memory of Jason is haunted and tormented him.
At Crystal Lake, this nightmare began.
That aspect of the character was definitely present in A New Beginning, but there it felt like he spent most of his time having visions of Jason or silently staring out a window, or sometimes both at the same time. In Jason Lives, he's so much more proactive. This iteration of the character has also been introduced to a whole new generation as a playable character in Friday the 13th the game. If I had one tiny microscopic criticism of Jason Lives, it's that I feel there's a bit of a missed opportunity with the Tommy character. There's an interesting meta aspect in the final chapter where young Tommy is into horror film makeup effects.
Amazing.
His interest in makeup effects and his name seem to be an homage to Tom Savini.
I was hanging out in my bedroom. I was bugging my mother for supplies, money for supplies, you know. It became a career move, a thing to do for a living, you know, which I never thought was possible.
Savini helped create the Jason character, he did the effects in the first film, and he came back to do the effects for the final chapter.
I gave him birth in part 1. It's like the Frankenstein syndrome.
Tommy is shown to still like masks when he's older, so much so that he packed some of his old masks to take with him in A New Beginning. It's just something that I missed about Tommy and Jason Lives. I know people grow out of their childhood interests, but it's not like it needs to be a focus of the movie either. I feel like even just an overt reference to this interest would have given the character more resonance as a continuation of his younger self. And it could be used to illustrate how much Jason has derailed his life. This is gonna sound like a paradox, but he could have essentially been Tom Savini if Jason had never been a part of his life.
Now, what would happen if I'm lying in bed some night and all these people that I've killed off decide to come back and take their revenge? Are you wondering what might happen in that case? Well, I'll be ready for them.
There are so many fun, cheesy sequences, such as the corporate paintball game. One detail I want to point out is the headbands the paintball players wear to signify that they've been killed.
Put on your headbands.
My family used to play paintball together when I was a teenager, and I kind of wish we had those headbands. What I love about them most in the movie, though, is how they're used as creative imagery. The paintball players who have been pretend killed are still wearing the headbands when they're subsequently killed by Jason for real. There's something really satisfying about that. That's not morbid, right? I actually really want one of those headbands now. Yeah, I'm still on hold. Although there's a lot of humor in the movie, I appreciate that it always treats Jason as a real threat. He's genuinely frightening. Speaking of Jason, another creative detail I love is the iconic spear that Jason uses in part of the movie. It's so iconic that he even uses it in the game, leading fans to nickname this particular incarnation of the hockey mask killer Spear Jason. But the coolest thing about it is that it's part of the fence at the cemetery that Jason was buried in, and Tommy broke it off to use as a makeshift spear. This is the first movie in the series where there are actually kids at the camp, which is a fun new element.
So what happened?
There's this monster, and he was after me, and he wanted to kill me.
Where?
He was everywhere.
Oh, you mean you had a bad dream?
No, it was real, just like on TV.
Another thing that really elevates Jason Lives is that it's the first movie in the series where I don't find 90% of the characters completely obnoxious. The film is so tongue-in-cheek that the obnoxious characters that are there are treated as a joke that the audience is in on, such as the sexist paintball guy.
She should have stayed in the kitchen where she belongs! A woman shouldn't even be allowed in these gears! Not a game, it's life!
Or this idiot camp counselor.
Listen, you obviously don't know anything about Indians, okay? Probably none of you do. Look, here's a story. These are called Indian markers, okay? Let's just say you have a chief, right? And he dumps his squaw or his wife or whatever, and he decides, hey, I'm gonna pick up with another one, I'm gonna take off with her. So he takes off, leaving his son with the mother, and all of a sudden, you know, a week or two later, the son wants to catch up with his dad, right? He wants to learn how to shoot a bow, stuff, you know, kill buffalo, whatever these guys do.
I feel like it's pretty rare that a movie pulls off such a character. There's this delicate balance where you don't care about him at all and would hate him in real life, but you kind of don't want him to die because he's fun to watch. Another good example of such a character is Ellis from Die Hard.
I watch 60 Minutes. I say to myself, these guys are professional, they're motivated, they're happening, i.e. they want something, huh? Now, personally, I couldn't care less about your politics. Maybe you're pissed off at the camel jockeys, maybe it's the Heaves, Northern Ireland. It's none of my business.
You know, I could actually see those two being brothers. This movie continues the meta aspects present in the fourth film, going so far as actually breaking the fourth wall.
Why'd I have to go and dig up Jason? Some folks have a strange idea of entertainment.
The pacing and editing of this film is quite good. It features a specific kind of transition I generally associate with comic books, where the end of one scene sort of echoes into the next with overlapping or coincidental dialogue as you turn the page. It was very common in the work of Alan Moore around the time that Jason Lives was released.
My name's Alan Moore. I write comics.
If you read Watchmen or his run on Saga of the Swamp Thing, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Take a look at this example in Jason Lives.
Does he think I'm a farthead?
It seems like usually when filmmakers are trying to give their movies a comic book feel, especially before the era of comic book movie cinematic universes, they would primarily rely on bright colors and Dutch angles. but in my opinion, utilizing these transitions is far more effective in giving a comic book feel. Silence. Jason Lives also has a great soundtrack with music by Alice Cooper. That song now has a permanent place on my Halloween season playlist. This is my favorite movie in the series now. So much so that I actually watched it the last 2 times that the 13th fell on the Friday. We've got a Friday the 13th coming up in March, and I've got 5 more movies to go. But I doubt any of the rest of them will top Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives.
No, I don't know how old we were either. Are you still there?